Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how our world is really run. We're going to dive into a pretty powerful concept called extrastatecraft. So, let me just start with a question for you. What if the most powerful laws in the world aren't actually written down anywhere? What if the rules that truly shape your life have never been debated in a parliament or signed by a president? Yeah, what if they're hidden in plain sight? Baked into the shipping routes that bring you stuff from across the globe, or the technical standards for the fiber optic cables that connect you to the internet. This is the hidden world we're about to explore. Now, the person who really blew the lid off all this is an architect and theorist named Keller Easterling. In her incredible 2014 book, Extrastatecraft, she makes this core argument. Infrastructure isn't just the background stuff of our lives. It's not passive. It's actually an active force of power. So to really get our heads around this, let's treat it like we're solving a mystery. And our very first clue is this idea of an invisible operating system that's quietly running the entire planet. Easterling calls this infrastructure space. And the best way to think about it is, don't think concrete and steel, think software. It's like this hidden set of codes and agreements that dictates how everything flows, from huge cargo ships to tiny data packets. It is literally the OS for globalization. Okay, so that's a bit abstract, right? Let's get physical. Let's look at our next clue, something you can actually point to on a map. These are real places, but they play by a completely different set of rules. These are what Easterling calls zones of exception. Imagine a little bubble inside a country that gets to ignore most of that country's laws. It's got its own special rules for taxes, for labor, for trade. It's basically a legal carve-out that lets it bypass all the normal regulations. And this isn't some sci-fi fantasy. This is real. Look at Shenzhen in China. It went from a small fishing village to a global tech powerhouse almost overnight because it was one of these special zones. Or think of all the free zones in Dubai. They're these self-contained islands of global capital designed to pull in investment by playing a different game. So we've got the physical clues, the zones. But what about the invisible stuff, the intangible clues? This is where we get into the hidden code that really runs our modern world. Easterling calls these active forms. You can just think of them as soft rules. Things like building codes or the internet protocols that let your phone talk to a server across the world. They're totally invisible, but they are incredibly powerful. They decide how our cities get built and how our networks connect. And what's wild is how these things spread. They don't need a government to pass a law. Nope. A company just creates a new standard, it works well, and boom, it gets copied and cloned and adopted everywhere. It's like rulemaking on hyperdrive, moving at the speed of tech, not the slow crawl of politics. So let's just put our two main clues side by side for a second. On one hand, you have the zones of exception. These are physical, visible places that bypass national laws. On the other, you have active forms. These are the intangible, invisible protocols that create new global standards. Both are incredibly powerful ways of governing that happen way outside of traditional government. Okay, we've seen the physical spaces and we've seen the invisible code. So now it's time for the big reveal. Let's connect the dots and see what picture this all paints. So what happens when we put it all together? Well, it starts with governments and corporations working together, often kind of behind the scenes. And the tools they're using aren't laws or treaties. They're using infrastructure, those special zones, and all those technical standards. And what they're doing is creating a powerful system of global governance that operates completely outside the democratic process we're all familiar with. And that, right there, is extrastatecraft. That's the whole idea. It's power being exercised far beyond the traditional state. It's basically the de facto way the world is run, through a quiet partnership between public and private players who use the global operating system of infrastructure. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a really interesting theory, but so what? Why does this really matter to me? Well, let's talk about the big takeaway for you. Most of us, we're taught to think of politics as the stuff we see on the news, the debates, the campaigns, the elections, the new laws. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Extrastatecraft suggests that the real power, the massive hidden part of that iceberg that's actually steering the ship, is all happening below the surface. It lies in the design of these systems and standards that you and we never, ever get to vote on. Keller Easterling has this killer quote that just says it all. You may never vote for a cable, but it still decides your life. And just think about that. It's so true. The standards for that one fiber optic cable can determine your access to information, to jobs, to the whole global economy. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Look around you. At the apps on your phone, the logistics that delivered your last package, even just the layout of your city. What are the hidden infrastructures that are shaping your world right now, probably without you even noticing?